Hey everybody, it's Grant, your friendly neighborhood InstructLab community member. Today is Wednesday, June 26th. It is 8:10 p.m. and got something special for you tonight, folks. We are going to hook up the InstructLab ilab command with a tool that I like to use to chat with the models. And I'll explain why I like to use a different tool than the built-in ilab chat command. Well, first of all, I'm a sucker for a good UI. And I think that the AnythingLLM tool, which we're going to integrate with today, has a great UI. It also allows you to add RAG capabilities on top of a model that you've already aligned. We'll get into that in a future video. But tonight I just wanted to show you how to set up the AnythingLLM. What you want to do is you want to go over to useanything.com, and this is completely open source. You can click on the GitHub link. You can download it from GitHub, or you can download it from the website. I'm always a sucker for a good open source project, so I'm going to download. Now, it does support Mac, Windows, and Linux. Check, check, check. Not only that, it supports Apple Silicon and Intel. Alright, so let's download the Apple Silicon version. I'm just going to open this. We'll see what happens here. And this will take just a few seconds. It's going to download a disk image, it looks like. So we'll open that, drag it into our applications folder. Easy. Alright. Now it's installed. Well, not yet. It's got to copy over 915 megs, so a pretty significant project here. And then we'll get it set up and going. All right, so we have that in our applications folder now. I'm going to open my applications, click on AnythingLLM, and we'll get the party started tonight. All right, let's open that. And what we want to do is AnythingLLM. Oh, it read my previous configuration file. I was hoping that I would be able to show you this from scratch, because obviously I said I used this. But I'll just go in and show you how to configure everything, okay? So once you get in, let me delete these workspaces actually, and then that'll give us a good representation of what it would look like when you first come in. And let's create a new workspace, okay? And we'll call this InstructLab. And we'll save that. So now we have an InstructLab project, and let's click on the settings icon. This will allow you to change your chat settings. Now, by default, it's going to use the system default for chat settings. So you can set that up down here under Workspace Chat, LLM preference. You can set up a global one here. But you can also set it up just on the workspace itself, and that's what I'm going to do. That way you can have multiple workspaces talking to multiple models. So maybe you want to talk with InstructLab on one workspace, and perhaps you're playing around with Olama and you want to chat with Olama in a different workspace. So let's change the settings for the InstructLab workspace. I'm going to go to chat settings, and I am going to go down and choose not local AI, but we want to choose a OpenAI, generic OpenAI. Connect to any OpenAI compatible service via custom configuration, and we're going to select that. Okay? And that is going to use my system defaults, it looks like. So let me show you how to set that up. So you come over here into the settings, you go to LLM preferences, you want to scroll down and select generic OpenShift API, and this is how I have it set up. When you run ilab serve, let's go ahead and do that and serve a model. So let me open a terminal here, and let me source my ilab environment. And then let's do a ilab model serve, and let's do a model path, and let's use a trained model actually. So let's go into a recently trained model that I just trained earlier, and we'll go down to instruct Merlinite Q4 GGUF, and we'll serve that. And so now that OpenAI compatible server is being served. Let's go back to InstructLab and set this up. You can see the 127.001:8000. I pulled that directly from what is displayed here. But the pro tip that I would give you here is that in order for this to work, instead of looking at the API, we want to add a /v1. I'll make sure that that's in the documentation for people. But you do want to do a /v1 on the end. For API key, you can put anything you want in there. I probably put Merlinite. And then for the chat model name, it doesn't really matter. I just put Merlinite there. We'll save changes. Now let's go back to our workspace, InstructLab, and look at the chat settings. And let's scroll down and change this to generic open API. And why I like this particular interface is, first of all, I do like a user interface, but second, you can set the temperature to whatever you want. If you're not familiar with what a temperature is when you're chatting with an LLM, the closer to 0, a temperature value is between 0 and 1. The closer to 1 you get, the more randomized the response is. The closer to 0 you get, the more deterministic it is. And so I like to set it to about a 0.2. You could try 0.3. You could also do a 0.9 if you want. It's up to you. And then you click Update Workspace. And then I'll get into this in a later video, but what is really cool is it also comes with a local vector database. So I could actually begin a RAG implementation locally here against the InstructLab model that I'm setting. All right. So let's go back and let's start a new thread with this model, and let's make sure it's connected. I can say, hello, how are you? Let me see if I can make the font a little bit bigger here for you. Ooh, I can, even better. All right, hello, how are you? We'll see if it connects. And it is talking to my InstructLab tuned model. So let's test it out. As you know from a previous video, I actually trained the model to understand the value of a flux capacitor on a DeLorean. And I'm doing this as part of a workshop that we're working on for an upcoming Summit Connect event. There's one in your city, so make sure to register for that if you want to come in and do this full lab that we're building out. So let's ask it, how much does it cost to replace the flux capacitor on a DeLorean DMC-12. Let's ask it. And let's see what it comes back with. Boom, Bob's your uncle. It costs $10 million to replace the flux capacitor on a DeLorean DMC-12. So you notice it was very concise here, and that's also because I set the temperature to, I believe, a 0.2 or a 0.3. I absolutely love this interface. Again, it is completely open source. It allows me to chat with multiple models, to keep threads around. In my day-to-day, people always ask me, hey, Grant, when you use these models, are you really using the ilab chat command? Well, I'm a big fan of the ilab chat command. I do prefer something like this because it does allow me to copy directly in here. I can edit the response. I can regenerate the response. Let's try that. It'll probably be exactly the same because my temperature is so low. But I do like this UI. And so, as I said in the future video, we're going to get into setting up a local RAG implementation here with a vector database, and it should be fun. So this was very easy to get started. Let me show you the difference between this and kind of the ilab chat on the command line. Let me source vn bin, activate, and then let's just do ilab chat, pass in the model, which was this InstructLab model, and then this InstructLab train. And I'll ask it the same question. How much does it cost to replace a flux capacitor on a DeLorean DMC-12? And this was also pretty concise. The cost to replace flux capacitor is $10 million. If you're interested in how I train that, watch one of my previous videos on the InstructLab YouTube channel, and you can see how we got that up and running. So another reason I like to use that other chat interface is I have it, help me in my day-to-day job with like crafting prose, documents, whatever. And, to cut and paste out of the terminal, it's a little more involved. So I get the response that I want or want to further refine and edit in my text editor or document editor or whatever editor I'm using to get a version of this that doesn't have the ASCII tables around it, I actually can do a /P, and then I highlight everything and copy it and then paste it in. Whereas over here, like I showed you, to copy this, I just hit one button and then I can transfer it in. So I'm a huge fan of this. It all runs locally. It is all open source. So check it out. It is AnythingLLM. Works perfectly with InstructLab, which is amazing that you can train your own models locally, add your own knowledge and skills, and then chat with it. Again, I'll show you how I set that up with the Workspace chat. With the LLM preference. I just set it to a generic OpenAI server, set it to my local host, :8000. Remember, the pro tip here is to add the /v1. I just used Merlinite, set the context window to 4096 and max tokens. And that's all there was to it. And then we can see in here what vector databases it supports. I'm going to be using Milvus in the video for next week to show setting up a RAG implementation on top of a aligned model with InstructLab. All right, so that's all for this evening, folks. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope to see you in the InstructLab open source community. Just go to instructlab.ai. You can join the community. You can read about the open source project. You can download the code and start aligning your own models locally with your own knowledge and skills. All right, have a good evening, everybody. Bye.